What's scarier than a clown? How about a clown that sells burgers? You see those golden arches everywhere. They promise happy meals and smiling faces. But what lurks in the shadows of those golden arches? What happens when the smile fades and the happy meal leaves a bad taste in your mouth? Fasten your seatbelts, kids, because we're about to dive into the terrifying world of McDonald's nightmares. These are true stories, stories whispered in hushed tones. Stories that'll make you think twice before you step inside those doors again. You've been warned. The sun beat down on the asphalt parking lot. The air smelled of French fries and fear. 10-year-old Billy stared out the window, his face pressed against the glass. "Where's Mom?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. His little sister Sarah pointed a trembling finger. She went to the car, silly, but the car was empty and Mum was gone. Suddenly a red van screeched past. Billy caught a glimpse of his mother inside, her eyes wide with terror. He screamed her name, but it was too late. The van vanished into the traffic. Never let go of your parents' hand, especially in a crowded place like a McDonald's parking lot. Strangers can be dangerous. The laughter echoed through the empty McDonald's. Ashley and Jessica giggled, sharing a final order of fries. It was late, but the employees hadn't kicked them out yet. "Maybe they forgot about us," Jessica whispered, glancing at the darkened kitchen. Suddenly the lights flickered, and then darkness, total darkness. Ashley fumbled for her phone. No signal, they were trapped. Jessica ran to the door, rattling the handle, locked. Panic surged through their veins. Someone was holding them prisoner. But who and why? Always leave a public place before it closes. You never know what lurks in the shadows after hours. Timmy clutched the stolen toy in his sweaty hands. His heart pounded in his chest, each beat echoing the guilt that gnawed at him. The night was eerily silent, save for the distant hoot of an owl and the rustling of leaves in the cool breeze. Timmy's eyes darted around, half expecting to see a shadow lurking in the darkness. It was a cool plastic dinosaur, one of those limited edition Happy Meal toys everyone wanted, the kind that kids would trade their lunch for, just to have a chance to own. Timmy had always wanted one, but his parents could never afford to buy him Happy Meals. So, when he saw it lying next to Sam's bed, temptation got the better of him. He had snuck into the hospital room while sick little Sam was sleeping and snatched it. The room had been dimly lit, the only sound being the steady beep of the heart monitor. Timmy had hesitated for a moment, looking at Sam's pale face. But the desire for the toy overpowered his conscience. But now, Timmy wished he hadn't. The weight of his actions pressed heavily on him, and the joy of owning the toy was overshadowed by a growing sense of dread. He couldn't shake off the feeling that he was being watched, that someone or something knew what he had done. Every night he woke to the sound of rattling chains and a voice whispering his name. The voice was soft, almost gentle, but it sent chills down his spine. "Timmy, Timmy!" It would call, and he would lie there, paralyzed with fear, clutching the dinosaur toy to his chest. A cold spot followed him around, and the dinosaur toy felt strangely warm in his hand. It was as if the toy had absorbed all the warmth from his body, leaving him shivering and cold. He tried to get rid of it, but no matter where he hid it, the toy always found its way back to him. One night he woke to see a shadowy figure standing at the foot of his bed, its eyes glowing in the dark. It was Sam. The figure didn't move, just stood there, staring at him with those piercing eyes. Timmy's breath caught in his throat, and he felt a cold sweat break out on his forehead, and he wanted his dinosaur back. Stealing is wrong. The words echoed in Timmy's mind, a lesson he had learned too late. He reached out with trembling hands, offering the toy back to the ghostly figure. Sam's eyes softened, and for a moment Timmy thought he saw a hint of a smile. And sometimes it comes back to haunt you. Timmy learned that night that some actions have consequences that linger long after the deed is done. As the shadowy figure faded away, Timmy vowed never to steal again, knowing that some things are better left untouched. Every Tuesday, Mr. Johnson would come to McDonald's. Rain or shine, he was there like clockwork at exactly 7 p.m. The staff knew him by name, and they would start preparing his order the moment they saw him walk through the door. He'd order the same thing, 2 Big Macs, large fries, and a large chocolate shake. It was a meal that seemed almost too much for one person, but Mr. Johnson would devour it all with a kind of reverence. The large chocolate shake was his favorite part. He'd sip it slowly, savoring every drop as if it were a fine wine. It was a ritual, one he never broke. He'd sit at the same table, in the same corner, every single time. It was as if that spot held some magical power for him. His stepson, Michael, found it creepy. He couldn't understand the obsession. To him it was just fast food, nothing special. The way Mr. Johnson's eyes would glaze over as he unwrapped the burger was unsettling. It was as if he was unwrapping a precious gift. The way he'd lick his lips, a strange smile playing on his face, made Michael's skin crawl. It was a look of pure, unadulterated joy, but it seemed almost inhuman. That strange smile was always there every single time. It was as if the Big Mac held some secret that only Mr. Johnson knew. One Tuesday, Mr. Johnson didn't show up. The staff noticed immediately. His usual table remained empty, a stark contrast to the bustling restaurant, nor did he show up the next Tuesday, or the one after that. Weeks turned into months, and still there was no sign of Mr. Johnson. The staff began to worry. They even called his home, but there was no answer. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. Michael never saw his stepfather again. He often wondered what had happened. Had Mr. Johnson finally realized the absurdity of his obsession, or had something more sinister occurred? Some say Mr. Johnson finally became one with his beloved Big Macs, his body dissolving into a puddle of secret sauce and sesame seeds. It was a local legend that grew with each passing year. The idea was both absurd and strangely poetic. A man so consumed by his love for Big Macs that he literally became one. Too much of anything can be bad for you, even Big Macs. And perhaps in the end, Mr. Johnson's love for them was his undoing. The bus rumbled to a stop in front of the brightly lit McDonald's. The soccer team cheered. They were starving after their big win, but this wasn't any ordinary McDonald's. This one had a strange smell. A sickly sweet smell that made their stomachs churn. "Something's not right," whispered the coach. His eyes narrowed. He was right. One by one, the kids started getting sick. Really sick. The burgers tasted funny. The fries were cold and limp. And the shakes? Don't even ask. It was a night of horror at the drive-thru, a night they never forget. Lesson: trust your gut. If something feels off about your food or at a restaurant, don't eat it. Little Emily loved Ronald McDonald. He was her favorite clown with his big red smile and funny shoes. So when her parents took her to meet Ronald in person, she was ecstatic, but this Ronald wasn't smiling. His eyes were cold and dark, his makeup was smeared, and his giant shoes, they looked like they were about to stomp on something or someone. Emily took a step back, her smile fading. "You're not the real Ronald," she whispered. Ronald let out a low growl. "Of course I am," he hissed, his voice raspy and deep. "Now come here and give me a hug, little girl. Lesson: not everyone who wears a costume is your friend. Be careful who you trust." "Look what I got," Tommy crowed, holding up a bright red car. His eyes sparkled with excitement as he showed off his new treasure to his friends. They gathered around him, their faces filled with envy and admiration. It was the newest Happy Meal toy, a sleek sports car that everyone wanted. The car was a limited edition, making it even more desirable. The glossy red paint and intricate details made it look almost real. But Tommy hadn't earned it. He hadn't waited in line or begged his parents for a Happy Meal. Instead, he had taken a shortcut, one that would soon lead him down a path of regret. He'd snatched it from his little sister's tray when she wasn't looking. She had been so excited to get the toy, her eyes lighting up when she saw it. But Tommy's greed had overshadowed her joy. "Tommy!" his sister cried, her face crumpled in distress. "That's mine!" Her voice was filled with a mix of anger and sadness, her tiny hands reaching out in a futile attempt to reclaim her toy. But Tommy just laughed and ran off, clutching his stolen prize. He felt a rush of adrenaline, a sense of triumph. He didn't care about his sister's tears. All that mattered was that he had the car. That night, Tommy's dreams were filled with screeching tires and the smell of burning rubber. He tossed and turned, unable to escape the haunting images of the car chasing him through dark, deserted streets. The little red car glowed ominously in the dark, its headlights seeming to follow him everywhere. No matter where he turned, the car was there, its presence growing more menacing by the second. The next day, Tommy woke up with a start. His heart was pounding, and his forehead was damp with sweat. He looked around, trying to shake off the lingering fear from his nightmare. His room was freezing cold, and the air was thick with the smell of gasoline. shivered, pulling his blanket tighter around him. The eerie atmosphere made him feel uneasy, as if something was terribly wrong. It seemed the stolen toy had come back to haunt him. The once innocent car now felt like a curse, a constant reminder of his wrongdoing. He couldn't escape its presence, no matter how hard he tried. Lesson: what goes around comes around. Tommy realized that his actions had consequences, and he couldn't run from them forever. He needed to make things right, to return the toy and apologize to his sister. Stealing might seem like a good idea at the time, but it always has consequences. Tommy learned this the hard way, understanding that honesty and kindness were far more valuable than any toy. So, the next time you see those golden arches shining brightly against the night sky, remember these stories, remember the children who vanished, the meals that went horribly wrong, and the toys that held dark secrets. McDonald's might promise a happy meal, but sometimes those meals come with a side of fear. Beware the golden arches, and beware the nightmares that lurk within.